Boom, hello, and welcome to the Protector Nation podcast, a podcast that is dedicated to making the world a better place, making the world a safer place by making good people dangerous. In this podcast, we're going to study and understand what it takes to protect your family, to protect your loved ones, because we all know that you have a few basic needs, food, water, and shelter, but you also have the need to protect those things. In a world and society where evil runs rampant and is sometimes left unchecked, learning how to protect yourselves and your loved ones is becoming more and more important. And so we strive to raise the level of accountability to those who would do evil on this planet by making sure that the sheep, that the flock, is more well-versed in protecting themselves and their loved ones. If that sounds interesting to you, then sit back and enjoy the show. Out.
Boom! What's up, you guys? Byron Rodgers here with another special episode of the Protector Podcast. This is going to be an awesome one. I've got a good friend, Emily Chen, here. How you doing?
Hey, Byron. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's an honor. I've been meaning to have you for quite some time on the show. There's so many reasons to have you on the show, but I'm glad I waited because different things kind of unfolded, as I've known you from initially when I first started shooting, like years ago, and that's evolved into now, and now you're like instructing, and that's crazy how time does that and how, you know what I mean? Like we've both developed so much since those days, so that's really beautiful. That's really cool. And then, just your past and who you are and things like that have also opened up to really show me that you have so much more. Like I would have had you on the show for one thing, but you have so much more to offer, as I've gotten to know that. 100%. Just a little digging into the first question, and we'll dig into kind of like, what are you up to these days, just so everyone can understand where you're at in the world and what you're doing.
Oh my goodness. As crazy as the world has been, I'm still instructing. I've been instructing for the last 4 or 5 years now. And that has significantly picked up because of the pandemic. And as I'm sure a lot of other instructors are experiencing as well. So just super busy teaching. I teach over at Chino Hills at Prado Olympic Shooting Park with Artifacts Firearms Training. I've been with them for several years now. Outside of Chino Hills, I'm teaching down in Oceanside, where I'm actually a local resident, and I'm over at Iron Sights off of Oceanside Boulevard.
Awesome. So, were you teaching with Artifacts and all these different things when I first saw you at that competition at like Paula, like way back in the day?
Oh my gosh, no, I was just a baby.
Yeah. So you kind of like had this whole firearms career, really, like you said, you mentioned Terran Tactical and a few other companies like that,
I've been very blessed. Terran Tactical, Grizzly Ears, Tiga Tactics, they've been absolutely amazing to me and have been extremely supportive throughout my journey.
Right, exactly, and so there's the tactical side of the house, y'all, but then we're also going to get into some real world trafficking, human trafficking and things like that as well. So this episode is going to have a little something, it's going to have a lot in it, but I'm proud of you for coming through everything the way you have. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And now you're instructing and you're, teaching, and anyways, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So what would you say, who are you at your core? Well, I always like to start from the beginning.
Emily. Oh my gosh. I hate that question because it's a constant search for self-discovery. You're never the same person that you were last year or even yesterday. Who am I at my core? I honestly don't know how to answer that. Throughout my years, I know a lot of people don't see me this way, but I've been extremely insecure for many reasons. Part of it was my upbringing with my family and the things that I'd been through with trafficking. And then that also kind of bleeds over into our industry, where it's a very male-dominated industry and not exactly welcoming for women. I think more so now than it was in the past.
Yeah.
So you've probably seen, a lot of not just cyberbullying, but a lot of like sexism and stuff in the industry. But I'm actually very proud of gents such as yourself who really stood up for women like myself, who have given ourselves to the passion of shooting for sport or for defense. And you guys are the guys that really helped us get through the sexism and the misogyny and all that stuff to help us become successful. So personally, I want to thank you for your strength.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to answer your question again, I'm sorry. I just go into these little tangents. Who am I at my core? When I was really insecure, even last year, I was a completely different person. I would say my genuine journey started this January. In the past, I was always searching for who I wanted to be or who I am in general. But this January, I went through 2 separate therapists to really get down to, you know what, you're not happy and you want to make a huge difference in your life to, you know, make a difference in other people's lives as well, because we all know that change starts with you. So I committed myself to not only being a better person, but practicing to be a better person for myself and for others, and significantly feel stronger as an individual, definitely wiser, and just overall feeling really good about myself. And I'm allowing myself to feel good about myself these days. So who am I at my core? I would say I'm a very positive and resilient person.
Outstanding. I love it. And it's got to be true as we dig into some more of these details. Otherwise, you really wouldn't be here, really. That's a fact. I've seen history cause some of the strongest people I know to take their lives, and you know that as well. So that I really appreciate hearing that, and it means so much, for the things that we go through, for them not to destroy us, to eat us alive, because they stinking can.
Yeah.
Another thing, and it's like, it's so real, another thing is that you mentioned that I'd like to highlight is that, like, you go to therapy. This is so tremendously important. Like, I don't know, personally, like, I think even for normal people, like for people that haven't been to war or the things that you're talking about. And I say this, and I should do better in this area, because I do go to therapy, but most of it's around, like my relationship. But I've always wanted to go to just my own therapist and sit there and just get to work on myself, because it's like you have someone who's trained in this art, like helping you dig around inside yourself. It's so stinking valuable.
It is.
Yeah.
I have attempted in the past to find therapists, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to find someone that you can really connect with. Chemistry is a thing. When people hear, oh, chemistry, it means like sexual chemistry. No, not at all. We're talking about the development of the relationship that you have with your therapist, because you're not going to just right off the bat get in touch with the person that you're sitting with and really connect with them. And that's something that I really struggled with. I think it was 2 years ago, I tried to find a therapist, and the one that I had was not exactly the best person that I had. If anything, if I listened to my therapist, I wouldn't be married to an amazing man right now. So things like that can happen.
That can happen. I've had to do a couple of those. Right? My experience was with church therapy, and it was like, church is church, and they might mean well, but like, pastors aren't therapists. You want to go to someone who has a degree in this, that like knows what they're, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just gonna put that in there. People can do what they want with it. Just remember, your pastor might not be a therapist, so just be careful. Anyways, I had an experience like that as well. So yeah, I think it's very important. And sorry if I cut you off there. I didn't mean to.
You're fine.
So yeah, I wanted to talk about that for a second, and then kind of, why do you do what you're doing now? Why all the tactical stuff? What's that about?
I just have a passion for teaching others. I feel like the reason why is because I was always expected to just know things. Just a little history about my shooting in general. I started when I was 13 years old. It was really a recreational thing. My father introduced it to me as like, hey, here's a gun. This is how you shoot it. It's kind of like, here's a car. Here's how you drive it, right? It should be simple. They're all mechanics. But I realized I got really good at it at a young age. And because it was one of the few things I was really good at, I wanted to pursue it. And so when I realized that people in general were just expected to know how to shoot a gun if it was just sitting in front of them, I thought, no, that definitely needs to change. You see a lot of people going to the range and they don't even know what to shoot. They don't know what kind of gun works best for them. That was never even a concept. It really started off with like, oh, I'm going to just shoot whatever I see in the movies and like hope that I hit something that's 3 feet in front of me, right?
Yeah.
So because I still hate the idea that someone's just expected to know something. I wanted to be part of their growth. I wanted to be part of the educational system behind firearms, especially here in California, which obviously gets a very bad rep.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. That's awesome. So it's just kind of something that's like been in your heart, something that was like introduced to you at a young age, and then, helping and contributing has just kind of been in your heart in this area. That's awesome. What would you say is your mission these days?
Oh man, a lot of things have been happening in my life. My most recent mission officially is my husband. So we will be moving to Okinawa at the end of this July. And it was a very, very hard decision for me because I am not ready to give up my career as an instructor, or even to stop competing in shooting, which has been slowed down because of the pandemic lately and because of the increase in having to teach. But because you're in a partnership, your partner will always have to come first, and that's a choice that you make every day. I was on the fence because I was feeling fulfilled with my career, but I didn't want to be that shitty wife that was like, hey, I'm going to pick my career over my husband. And so that was another reason why I had to go to therapy, because I was not only trying to really find direction, but to really come to peace with the idea that, okay, you know what, just because one chapter of your life closes doesn't mean it doesn't open up for other opportunities in the future. And I don't know what's going to be out there in Okie for me. I know that I won't be able to bring my guns and that shooting's not allowed, but there's airsoft. So I can always take that up as, something to hold me over for the next 3 years while I discover other amazing things.
Yes.
So
yeah.
My first is going to be my husband.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. It's refreshing to hear, actually. And our world is just by nature, I think, because it's so consumer driven. Everything's very much about like the individual, so you don't hear things like this every day. One thing I will say about airsoft is, being a gun guy, and I remember like I didn't want to respect it. Yeah, I didn't want to respect it. I was just like, yeah, whatever, man. Then I had a buddy. It was actually Alex Coe, was like, yeah, we're gonna go do airsoft for my birthday. You think you can hang? Want to come hang out? And I was like, yeah, man, whatever, dude. Do some airsoft, like big deal, man, And it was legit. Like it was legit. It was legit. And I remember my legs were sore for days afterwards. We ran like executive protection scenarios, which I did win one of them. Yes, I did. We did two of them.
Awesome.
And it was really good training, like to the point where it was great force on force training. So, we do what we do it on a square range, and we do what we do in competitions. Airsoft and force on force stuff is a whole different beast. And actually, I intend to build a lot more of that into my training regimen. You'll be more dangerous if you do airsoft on a more regular basis than you are right now, just shooting competitions and training. You just will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can definitely throw in a lot more realistic situations, and you really test your strength, your resilience, your mentality while you're under duress. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, fluid intelligence, fighting another human.
Yeah.
That's why jiu-jitsu and sports that you can practice at speed are so effective at making you dangerous. That's awesome. But your whole, philosophy in that, and supporting your husband and your husband being your mission, this stuff is valuable. These are very, very honorable attributes, especially in today's world. He's blessed to have someone with that mentality. Outstanding. So now we get into the real world story, of what happened, and what's taken place in your life with regards to trafficking. Thank you for honoring us with this story.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I was 17 when I met my trafficker, and it was all coercion, basically. It didn't outright scream human trafficking. I didn't even know that was a thing. He was very charming, just I was in a very vulnerable position because I didn't have a good relationship with my family, specifically my mother. And I was constantly thinking, I just want to get out of my environment. It's too toxic for me. So when I met my trafficker, he was not only charming, but very patient. And I think that's part of the process with people who are looking to groom victims. They are always patient. They do everything they can to be trusting. And so I fell into that pit, basically. He was the only person that I felt that I could trust. And so when I turned 17 and I graduated high school, he asked, hey, do you want to move in together? Because I know that you don't have a good relationship with your family. And, you know, he wanted to develop a more intimate relationship with me. So obviously I saw that as an exit and a chance to get out of my environment. And so I moved into an apartment with him in Irvine. And for the first month, it was great. It was like, oh, I feel like a brand new person. He's reaffirming my confidence. He's reaffirming with affection and pretty much anything else that can make you feel good about yourself. And then the following month, I realized things were starting to get out of control because he was becoming more controlling, not just mentally and emotionally, but also physically. And then I realized that things were not in a good place when I just couldn't get out of the apartment.
How would you say, like, how long did the grooming take? You said he was really patient.
Yeah. So I would say it was about a year and a half process.
Wow. A year and a half process. And you believe these were his intentions from the beginning?
You can't tell. This person made it look like he wanted to be my boyfriend, which at the time he was. I started off not really being able to connect with anybody. He showed interest in me not as a friend, but also as somebody that he would like to, you know, get to know on a deeper level. And so all those things were just like shiny, dangly things for me to try and get.
Yeah. As you think back, were there any target indicators that could have tipped you off to like nefarious intent, or maybe was it not there? Were there any like tells?
I think back to it all the time because a lot of people ask that question, and it's really hard because they're just a trusting person. There was never any indication for me, at least in my mind, that said, hey, this might be too good to be true. Sometimes it was because, you know, I didn't really have any friends. And so I didn't really know what was healthy, especially coming from a bad, broken family. Yeah. And so in my mind, it's like, if anything was good, then I got to take it while I still can have it. It was almost like I was a vulture, you know, just thinking like, I know that my whole life just sucked. And if there's any good in it, I just want to cling on to it and take it for what it is.
Yeah. So, and you know, like those of us who have daughters, you know, it's like something that a reoccurring theme that I have definitely realized, and there's a lot of data that supports, that makes the female more vulnerable, and males, but really females, like we have different battles, you know, is that insecurity and that broken home, and wanting to escape that. And it creates like a pocket for another male with whatever value system he has or person to slide into and gain some really, really important real estate in that person's being.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, a lot of times parents don't really think too much into their kids' social lives. Like, what kind of friends are they making? A lot of times parents think, oh, I don't want kids over at my house, but that's an opportunity to get to know who your friends or your kids' friends are. You know, have them in your home and just get to know the kinds of people that your children are surrounding themselves with. Another important aspect, especially for those in high school, maybe even middle school, is sexual education. You know, you talk about the biology aspect of it and how to procreate, but you don't talk about issues when it comes to like men raping women, or even women raping men, and, you know, whatever the genders are these days. I'm making a joke about that. But in general, there's no education about like stranger danger or anything that can cause you mental, emotional, and physical harm when it comes to intimacy. And I think that schools have a problem with that because it's a very difficult topic to touch on. I didn't receive any sexual education, and it was really hard because when I asked my parents, they just said, "Oh, you'll know when you're older someday," and that's it. But there was never an insight to, look, you're becoming a woman and you are going to attract men, and you have to be careful. Having that very difficult but real conversation is so vital.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as skills that could have equipped you a bit, you're saying like sexual education with regards to even the intangible aspects of sexual interaction could have really helped, and possibly equipping you or the young person with things that help with self-esteem, you know, would also help, maybe helped you see that person more accurately, or maybe even chosen a higher quality or even attracted a higher quality person.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I was from a place that knew nothing about anything, so anything could have happened, which it did. Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting stuff to dig around in, and thanks for going on this little exploration.
No, good. And on top of those things, I think teaching kids situational awareness, teaching kids how to be control of their own bodies, in the aspect of physical activities like martial arts, right? Like obviously kids can't really bring weapons to school or anything like that, but they still have the capability to defend themselves in other ways. And I think that that's part of the confidence building process, because martial arts in general, despite what age you are, when you achieve something you've never done before, it makes you feel amazing.
Yes.
And so if you apply that to children who see it as, oh my god, this is so monumental, like I don't even know how to do all these things, but then you teach them how, and then they do it, then it opens their eyes to seeing that they have so much potential for greatness, and that just takes them even further. And then applying that to a public situation, your attacker in most cases have no idea what they're doing. All they're thinking about is, I'm going to either attack this person right off the bat in an explosive motion and just hope that I get what I want, or maybe it's pre-planned. But the fact is that most of the time it just happens right away. And if children apply situational awareness, and even learn how to either evade or escape if they can't fight off their attacker, then it would just probably be a safer situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you touched on some things that were huge in terms of developing confidence. Confidence comes from experience. I'm seeing a lot with people that I'm interacting with. Our world is so easy now. It's so easy now. And so a lot of people are growing up without really realizing who they are, or really having to go through anything that breeds confidence inside themselves, because confidence comes from self-trust, from experience with yourself. And if you've never done anything difficult, if you've never even seen that you can learn or achieve anything great or above what the average is, then how do you have self-trust when adversity shows up? You have arrogance, which is inaccurate confidence. You think you're special because like your mama told you you're special, or because, like you see a lot of commercials on TV that like talk about how cool you are just for being here. Like, but there's no participation trophies in life, at least not in your mind. Like, what really makes me special? What makes me different? Ask yourself right now. Some of us have answers to these questions. Some of us unfortunately don't. And it creates a vacuum in our minds, and it makes it so that external things then impact us way more heavily than they should. And they have way more of a say on what we think about ourselves than they should. What we think about ourselves should come from inside, what we know about ourselves, what we've proven to ourselves, and it's really unfortunate that people become adults without these experiences of proving these things to themselves that no one else can take away from them.
Yeah, and I think that that comes with circling back to being an instructor of some kind, right? I was very blessed to have Daniel with Artifacts, who took me under his wing, not just to be one of his instructors, but took me in as a friend. And he really taught me what it's like to be respected. He taught me how to respect myself. because I was just a wild mess. Like, if you ask Daniel, what was Emily like when you first met her? He'd give you this face like, oh man, she's crazy, right? But if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would ever be anything close to the person that I am today, because nobody taught me what self-respect was. Even most of the friends that I surrounded myself with were emotionally and mentally abusive. But because I was so used to that, it was like, well, this is normal, right? When really it's not normal, and it should never be normal. Yeah. I remembered one time I was working at a gunsmithing shop, and I looked up to this person as a big brother, but he had no issues putting his hands on me. He would slap me or push me around, and I let it happen because that's what I was used to. That was normal for me. And so without going into detail, there was an incident at Prado where someone had put their hands on me, and that was a huge lesson because Daniel was there and he witnessed everything, and he said, doesn't matter what it was, a man should never ever touch you like that. And I thought, oh, but I'm not physically hurt, so why is it such a big deal? But then, in general, he just said, no one should ever touch you like that just because of a verbal altercation. And that was mind-blowing to me. And that shows you just how little respect that I had for myself, because I didn't know where to even start.
Yeah.
So it was a huge life changer for me.
That's awesome. I remember seeing part of this metamorphosis from the outside when I noticed you changed your because I'm a sensitive human. So I remember meeting you, and then I remember I think you changed your name on Instagram, and I was like, nice. I was like, I see this. This is good. This is very healthy. And I think this the stuff we're talking about is so important. It's like when Jesus says, let him who has ears to hear, let him hear. Like, if you can hear and understand these things, they're very important things. And I hope that people can feel the weight and value in them. And then the other thing too, one might think when they see human trafficking and then they see your nationality during this podcast that this was something that happened when you were a kid in some other country somewhere, or you escaped to America and got away or whatever. This happened in Irvine.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Born and raised in California, never stepped foot in China, never will. My family's from Taiwan anyway, so fuck China. Right. But it's true. A lot of people see me and they're like, oh, you must have come from a third world country. Or you worked at a massage parlor and that's where it happened, because those are the stereotypical human trafficking places, right? But that's not the case whatsoever. I was sold on Craigslist in Irvine. And Irvine apparently has a really bad rep for just sweeping things under the rug.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So let's go more deeply into this. So what exactly happened? So you said that you couldn't get out of the apartment at a certain point.
Yeah.
And that's how you realized things were going south.
So be a little bit more specific.
Okay. So then what happened? So he basically at some point locked you in the apartment and put you for sale on Craigslist.
Yes. So I was not alone ever. I was never left alone. It was either my trafficker or there were definitely others. Yeah. I was either physically restrained and or kept in the closet. And that is a very difficult thing to explain, I guess, because I still have nightmares and I wake up in my closet, in my bedroom closet. And, wow. I've talked to my therapist about that. And she said that it's one of those places where even though you had a traumatic event in there, it was the only safe place that you felt in that toxic environment, because it was the one thing that separated you from them. If they needed you, then they would come get you. But that's the only time you really had to yourself. Yeah. But to answer your question about, what happened afterwards, they became a lot more physically controlling. They restrained me in different ways. I was either drugged or just completely unconscious for, I don't even know how long, hours, maybe days. They would concoct drugs at the apartment, not methamphetamines or anything like that, but I'm talking about like mixing paint thinner with NyQuil and like all these things that you can just buy from the store. I don't know what they made me drink. I don't know what they spiked my drinks with or my food or anything like that. All I knew is that I was either conscious or not. And if I wasn't conscious, like, thank God for that.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense. And how did this situation ultimately culminate into your escape?
So it was April 14th at 6:30 in the morning. And I wrote about that as my alive day because, you know, it's my day of freedom. But just one morning, officers showed up. The FBI was there also, but I was in the closet and I just heard this ruckus, just a bunch of people running into the apartment. I remembered hearing it, and then I saw the closet door opening and someone took my hand and they led me out of the apartment, and I was taken to the hallway, and I was able to watch everybody just kind of like break apart the apartment. Basically, they were trying to find evidence. Plenty of evidence was there. They weren't expecting me to be there because they were looking for my trafficker. And unfortunately, he was the only one at the time when the raid happened. I remembered seeing guns being drawn at him. There must have been at least 10 people in the living room itself drawing guns at him. And then that's when I later also found out that the German police had been looking for him. And so I didn't know anything. All I saw was people going in and people arresting him. After that, I remember standing in the hallway with this officer, and he was still holding my hand. He was like, "You're awfully calm about this." And I said, "I don't know how to feel." I was just so much in shock. I didn't really know how to process all that information. So once they had my trafficker in handcuffs and they sat him down on the living room floor, I was taken back into the bedroom. They set up a seat for me to sit down in so they can question me about everything. And it turned out that my trafficker said that the computer in the apartment was mine, and it wasn't. It was definitely his. So they were basically, I don't want to say interrogating, they were interrogating him, but they were just nicely asking me questions to verify what was going on. So that was pretty much it. I was offered witness protection program, which I turned down because at the time I thought, oh, my life is great, it's going to be fine from here on out. Later on, I realized I probably should have taken the offer. But in general, it was a day of mixed emotions.
Wow. So just traversing. Did you feel any connection to your capture? Did you feel any like sympathy for him or anything like that?
No, definitely not. I was tortured for 6 months, physical, mental, and emotional torture that I still feel today. You know, I relive it through my nightmares. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it. The worst thing that they've ever done to me was they waterboarded me and they gang raped me at the same time. And I had to be conscious for that. Anytime I was trying to just slip away, you know, you have this out of body experience where you just don't want to be a part of it. And I've written this a couple times where I mentioned that your body is just a flesh bag. Like, that's literally true. At some point, pain is no longer an issue. You just go numb. You mentally go numb. You physically go numb. And all you can think is like, I just want to fucking die. And that's why within those 6 months, I literally tried to kill myself. I tried to commit suicide because I just needed to get out and there was no other way. But they took that from me. And that was the hardest part of coming out alive. So the day that I was rescued or found, whatever the term may be, I felt happiness because I'm free, but at the same time, I didn't know if I was actually free because I didn't know what else to expect after this. And because that had been a very conditioned lifestyle for a long time, I didn't know how else to live my life. And I was still stuck mentally and emotionally back to when I tried to kill myself and I couldn't. That to me felt like unfinished business. And I still feel that way. A lot of times people think like just because you're rescued, you get to live happily ever after. No, that shit sticks with you for the rest of your life. And so, going through therapy recently has helped with it, but I have intrusive thoughts. I have moments where I'm like, I'm having a bad day and I'm talking myself through it, but that lingering feeling of like, you should have just killed yourself when you had the chance. And I did, I tried. I had grabbed a pair of scissors because that's all I could get my hands on. And I attempted to stab myself. And as soon as I grabbed the scissors and I was going for it, somebody grabbed me and took it away from me. And then, other things happened after that. But it was hard. It was very hard.
Yeah, no, that's something that, there are a lot of accounts of disassociation under extreme trauma. And those trauma imprints, our mind records everything that happens, but the trauma imprints on us the hardest and the deepest. They talk a lot about, with us trying to get over PTSD, about trying to normalize those things and speak about those things and tell those stories as much as possible, because that helps us process the reality. I feel bad for people that live in reality that have no idea that this is reality and it's happening right now all around the world, and it should upset the righteous person, because it's happening right now. And the only thing for evil that evil needs in order to thrive is for good men to do nothing, and good women and good people to do nothing. And this is kind of one of the things I want to stir up in people, is it's not just good enough to be good. We must be formidable, and we must, if we're warriors, seek evil and seek to eradicate evil, as righteously, as compassionately, but ruthlessly as possible. I think those things are important. The other thing that I want to say to you is, for everything you've gone through, you are so special for those things. Let me try not to get emotional with you, because, but these things that we go through, they make us who we are, and we get to choose. We get to choose. We're not just special because we go through them. We're special because of the choices we make after we go through them, about what they're going to mean, in the future, about what they're going to mean to us and how they're going to cause us to act, because these things become weapons in our hands if we can choose to live righteously afterwards. You endured these things and you made it through these things, and that's beautiful. But what's even more beautiful and more powerful is that now you're equipped with these experiences. And although it is hard, it's a cross you have to carry, you also have the ability and the power, by the grace of God, because you made it through there somehow, to now speak into people's lives in ways that you couldn't before. Your story has power. We win by the blood of the Lamb, but through the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. That testimony that you have now is a tool for good, for light, for righteousness. And you're now an example that people that hear this and that the world is going to look at, of, despite what's happened to me and what is happening to millions of other women and young men and people this year, right now, how they can live despite these things that have happened. So I have to commend you and I have to honor you for being here. It's so dang valuable, and your strength to be able to go into these things for the sake of good. It's so honorable.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I admire you. It's real. So, and I don't be getting emotional ever. So that's awesome, girl. I'm so proud of you. And it's so powerful. You can't get power like this or things like this. It doesn't come from working out. There's nothing, you have to go through it, to be where we are now, where you are now. So it's amazing. But the choices you make, after these traumas happen is what makes the difference. So I'm proud of you.
A lot of times people don't even know where to start. I know I didn't. People also ask me, well, how did you get through those 6 months? Like, what was your motivation? And I told them I just thought about my family because they were threatened, to be killed by my trafficker if I attempted to escape, if I attempted to do anything that they didn't want me to do. And so it was really, if I don't go through with this, then my family's going to be dead and I can't live with that. Like, anybody that I give a shit about, if something were to happen to them because of me, there's no way I could ever live.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the psychological control, I think that I know that they use, it's people are like, well, why don't you just run away? Or why don't you just this, that, and the next thing? Like, to some of the folks that are tied and up in this game that, are out in the streets, it's like, well, there's a lot more to this type of bondage than just physical detainment in many cases. There's a lot of psychological control, and it's effective, especially when you see how ruthless these people are.
Like, people have no idea how inhumane people can be. Just, you can think of the most fucked up shit out there and someone is definitely doing it 10 times worse.
Right. Absolutely. And understanding that that's organic to the human form. Humans have been doing things like this to each other, and since humans have been on the planet, so to think that like all people are just good and things will just be fine it's such a flawed mentality. There's evil in everyone, and we make choices about what we're going to feed inside of ourselves. I think that makes a difference. There's a lot of beauty in humanity, but there's just as much darkness.
Yeah. And a lot of times, specifically women who know about my situation, they ask, well, how did you learn to trust men again? And to me, it was never even a gender thing. I mean, there's plenty of women out there who also traffic children or other individuals. It's never a gender thing. It's just, like you said, it's a human thing. There's a lot of beauty in humanity. And I came to a position where, yes, it was very scary because now it's like I question everything and everyone, but everyone deserves a clean slate. Everyone deserves to be seen as who they are. And what I've learned is that consistency in behavior is another form of situational awareness, right? When we were talking about looking back, if I were younger, what would have been a better way to figure out who I could trust? That would be patient with this person, be patient and see what kind of consistent behaviors they have. If you feel like the consistency is over a period good, then great, you can start trusting that person. Don't just simply accept everything, right? If you know what your limits are, if you're not okay with something, that's fine.
Right.
You shouldn't just simply accept somebody for all they are if you don't like anything about them. That makes no sense. And it's a pure disrespect to yourself as well. So just learning what your limits are and being aware of consistent behavior, that's something that we, in our field of work, right? You as an executive protector, myself as an instructor, when we're activating our situational awareness in a public setting, we have the baseline plus anomaly equals decision, right? That's usually the formula. You go somewhere, you know what everyone's normal behavior is going to be like, but then when someone starts acting a little bit weird, you're like, that's weird. That's not normal in this environment.
100%. And I think too, the boundaries you're kind of talking about, setting boundaries and looking for patterns is so big, it's so big. And it does come right back to what you were mentioning at the beginning of this thing. If you have a vacuum of insecurity, if you have insecurity as kind of the base of your personality, you're not going to be able to enforce boundaries. You're not going to be able to see patterns of negative or anomalies or troubling behavior accurately, because you're just going to be trying to feed off of the validation that person gives you rather than seeing all the other tells. And it comes back to that. What's your relationship like with yourself?
Yeah.
You can't outperform your self-concept. You won't enforce boundaries because you'll be so concerned with losing someone, and this is when you start to slip into a trap of what can become maybe not even a trafficking relationship, but just an abusive relationship, or a relationship where your relationship with yourself is so toxic that someone else treating you in a toxic manner isn't weird. And then you spend your whole entire life, really not ever being able to acquire happiness and a good, healthy sight picture on yourself. And you don't have to be perfect to do that. You just got to be working on yourself,
Yeah,
None of
absolutely.
us are perfect. Most everything I do is from the reality of my imperfection. It's like, why are you up in the morning working out? Because you think you're somebody special? No, it's because I know I'm going to be fat if I don't. And I'm kind of fat right now, which isn't really fat, but it's kind of chubby. So I need to work on it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, whatever, Byron.
I'm trying to get that six pack, son. I got like a couple of them. I want all of them. But that's the reality. It's fine to be imperfection is perfection because everyone's so imperfect in some ways. But it's that stuff's so important.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned is really important because
Yeah.
a lot of times we want to be perfect, right? But we have a very difficult time accepting our imperfections, which in some ways is actually really good because that helps you want to be better, right? If you have that mindset of I'm not happy with who I am, what do I have to do to improve upon that? It's going to be a constant journey, right? Like I said before, you're not going to be the same person you were last year. But as long as you're trying and you actually are going through that journey, you're actively telling yourself, I want to be this person, I'm going to do it, then you're going to get to where you eventually want to be because, you're just never happy with yourself. And maybe in some cases you're like, I'm happy with these things, but there's always going to be at least one thing you're thinking, I can do better and I will do better and I have to do better.
Yeah, it's so good. I had somebody telling me the other day, like, am I ever going to be good enough? I'm like, what are you talking about? What are we talking about good enough? Like, there's no such thing as good enough, man. I'm like, the whole entire game is like, I'm not good enough. So I work hard, but I'm good. I'm better than I was yesterday. You know what I mean? Like now I'm kind of good at some stuff. You know what I mean? Now, granted, we shoot competitively. We know how good we're not. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God, no.
These guys out here, girls out here,
They make it look easy.
Yeah, they're like got superpowers compared to us. But we ain't where we were when we started. That's for sure. And we can hang with, we can go to pretty much any class and hang with the best of them, But then we go back into our world of competitive shooting, and it's like, you're all right, buddy. like you're okay, you're good, like ish. And that's so healthy, I think.
It is.
Life progress equals happiness, not perfection. You never arrive, I think it's a very healthy paradigm.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about doing it for yourself. We also think about, well, I want to do these things because it will impress others. Okay, but like think about the satisfaction you'll bring to yourself. Like if you're sitting in your room on your own and you're like, man, you know what? I did this. I did this for me. And being proud of yourself, like I remember the very first time that I felt proud of myself. And it was like mind blowing to me because I'd never been able to feel proud of myself for something. We go through a lot of our insecurities, our fears, and we focus so much about that, but we don't think about all the positive things that we've done for ourselves in our lives. And maybe because we live with ourselves every day, it seems so minuscule, but really when we compare kind of like what you said a couple years ago to now, like you're not the same person and you're a better version of yourself. You just didn't see it as you were going through it. But when you make that comparison, the before and after, like it's night and day.
It's huge. I'll go shoot a competition on Saturday and be pissed at myself for how bad I did. You know what I'm saying? But then if I see tape of myself from 2 years ago, I'm like, yeah, well, this is counting. It counts what I've been doing.
It's part of the progress.
Yeah, it's like you fight a dragon of insecurity. It's like but it's work that's got to be done. It's got to be done. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful battle. It's one of the most important battles I think that we all have to fight because it's what you can't do anything if you don't have that self-trust that comes from this battle. If you had advice for females around these topics, I don't know, like around self-confidence and boundaries, or even around kind of trafficking and things like that, does anything come to mind?
So I would employ what I actually teach downrange, and it's asking yourself why am I not good enough? Why do I feel insecure? why do I feel like I'm not the person I want to be? Why do I feel like I'm not accepted for who I am? Those are a lot of questions that I think people have in the back of their mind, but they don't actually answer for themselves.
Yeah.
And asking why is probably the most fundamental thing that one can do to improve their life. So to women and even girls, you know, why do you feel insecure? What are you doing that's causing that feeling of insecurity? Are you comparing yourself to other people? Are you in a bad environment like I was for myself? What are some things that within your power you can do to help change those types of behaviors or environments, right? If it takes you having to get rid of social media so you can stop comparing yourself to other women, just do it, right?
Yeah, do it for yourself, your own good. Right? Save yourself. Yeah.
What kind of friends are you surrounding yourself with? That was so huge for me. You know, I needed people who can elevate me to that next level, who had high expectations for me. And I still do, actually. If anything, I now run with wolves, as the quote goes. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to Buck Grant and Matt Owen and a couple of other guys, Jared Wihongi, which you actually were with not too long ago.
Yeah, he's going to be at this next symposium. We're going to tear it up.
Yeah, those individuals are amazing because they have this mental resilience where you just know that they are there, and they had to have gone through their own insecurities, their own struggles. Whatever that was, they got to where they are now. If you look up to somebody and you have a very good reason why you're looking up to them and you want to be like them, surround yourself with people with the same mindset, right? If you take an insecure person and you drop them into a circle of people who have that high expectation, you are either going to transform yourself into those same types of people, or you're just going to sit at rock bottom for the rest of your life. There's no other option. You're either going to do it or you're not, yeah. Right? And for me, when I had nobody to look up to, when I had no sense of guidance and I was constantly in my insecurities and just my depression, I was wandering. You know, when I met Daniel and he took me under his wing, that was the start of it. That was an introduction to your life can be better if you yourself set up those expectations. And so once not only Daniel did, but with others, once I started surrounding myself with the right kinds of people, then it was easier for me to work through those insecurities. And it's not about, you know, them trying to reinforce positivity for me. I had to visualize that by looking at them and the life that they live. That was for me to say, okay, that's what I want to be. What do I have to do to get through to get to that point? Yeah. And so having role models is a huge thing for, you know, girls or women. And I don't think that that's a lot of good today. There's not a lot of strong female characters out there who are guiding young women and children to being stronger in their adult life. A lot of people look up to Kim Kardashian and, you know, all these celebrities that are so meaningless. Yeah. I know that sounds so harsh, but their purpose in life is to just act on screen or to be a fashionista. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not meaningful. Right. What is that doing for you as a person to progress in life? Nothing, because it's all aesthetics. We need a moral compass. We need somebody who's there to really talk reality with you. Everyone loves to sugarcoat things these days, and that's a huge problem. Like, I'm the most blunt person that I think anyone could ever meet. And so I needed that kind of bluntness from others as well. I needed someone to say, Emily, you're fucking up today. All right, what am I doing wrong, right? There's criticism, accept criticism.
So important.
It is. If you don't like what they're saying, maybe it's because there's some truth to it, you know? Yeah. So again, just deciding what you want to do with your life starts with imagining and visualizing who you should surround yourself with, because then you have somebody who's going to say, if you want to be like me, or if you want to come close to anything in my circle, then you have to meet this level of expectation. And that's so important.
So important. Standards. They're literally, you said like so many things in there that are so good with regards to constructive feedback, yeah, get your feelings out of the way and get better. Like just, like powerful people will give you feedback. And if you can't just get your feelings out of the way, no, like even if they say it to you mean, you got to understand this is the path to getting better. It's like, wait, what am I doing wrong? What do you think I'm doing wrong? I'm going to investigate that. I'm going to root it out and I'm going to get after it. And it's just the way, and then with your relationships, they have this thing called the rule of fives, which is like, you're only going to rise as high as your 5 closest friends. And that's because those norms that are around you, they're everything, like I remember when I started even shooting competitively and I'm hanging with Luke and all those guys and they're burning it down. And you got to crawl. You just got to crawl, man. You got to crawl for a while. But then the norm is this high bar, and you start to realize what you're seeing in front of you starts to drive you because your perspective will dictate your performance. Like what's possible. I remember the first time I saw that Rambo movie when the guys are, on the ship and they're about to like take the woman and, it's one of the latest Rambos, one of the new ones where he's like old and 60, but he's like amazing and like roided out and awesome still. And I remember he like shoots like 6 pirates in a few seconds. And I remember being like, that's impossible, And then I started hanging with these dudes shoot competitively and I start realizing like, it's not actually impossible. Like Luke could probably do that, and I start being like, this is what's possible. And then, that perspective elevates, and then that goal elevates, and then the norm of who you're running with elevates. And then all of a sudden that dictates your performance. And now you're getting to a place where it's like, no, I can almost do things like this, and it changes your life. And it's like, and you're right. There's so many bad role models, bad people that are elevated in the world. And you find yourself, it's like, well, who do I look up to? Me having my dad is a great man who I love, but he was in the Bahamas when I was growing up. So it was like, well, who do I look up to? Thank God, I had the Holy Spirit to guide me. And my whole life has been about a relationship with him and with my creator, that's been my guiding light. But I ultimately, it was like, well, whose ideas do I allow into my mind? Because like, I've got to figure out how to do this life. And fortunately, I discovered audiobooks. And I was like, well, guess what? You know what? I don't have any male here who's like good enough for me to want to follow, because in the church, I was a warrior. So in the church, there's all these like really nice guys, happy wife, happy life. And I was just like, nah, dude, nah, bro. I'm like, no, like, I'm not following you. I got to learn some stuff from you. You know what I'm saying? But like, you're not my type of dude, and I started to really go on my own journey. And thank God I was like, you know what, I'm just going to spend some time with like Tony Robbins and Les Brown and Zig Ziglar and, Robert Greene and all these authors. And I'm going to really spend time with the thoughts of great men who've done great things way beyond what I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I'm going to absorb that and absorb their opinion and absorb the way they look at problems. You bet they've solved problems that are much more sophisticated than what I'm looking at, and it's made all the difference. So your friends, if you ain't got friends around you, go online and download some good friends.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't too big into listening to podcasts for a while, but I actually started with yours. Do you remember back then when I was asking you questions about executive protection?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I went to audition with Gavin DeBecker and Associates, right? And I graduated from their academy. I did. Yeah. I even have a certification and all these other things. That was actually last February is when I went in. And it was a 10-day academy. And I walked out of that feeling a lot more accomplished because, mental resilience was a thing. But the fact is that I had to prove to myself that this is what I wanted. Why do I want to be an executive protector? I'm sure that a lot of people ask you that question. And it's not just because I want to do good in the world, but because in many ways, that is one way to prove that you are worthy of the position. You have to prove to yourself every single day why you are worth that job. And it's not about the money, because at the end of the line, like, they're paying you to be disposable.
Yeah. Right? You're the help.
Yes. But it keeps you in line with what you're thinking and feeling. Emotional intelligence is another huge thing that people don't talk about. And so when you surround yourself when I surround myself with people like you who are constantly talking on their podcasts about mental resilience and how you guys go through difficult times or push through your insecurities, like those are so important because nobody has those real talks. And if nobody talks about those things, then everybody's going to live a very mediocre life because they have no guidance. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. That means everything. That's huge. There's stuff that the stuff feedback I get from these things is beyond priceless. Thank you so much.
No, there's a reason why people listen to you. There's a reason why, everyone's always looking up to you, listening and taking your advice about not just executive protection, about life in general. You post a lot about these situations and scenarios that people can find themselves into, but have no concept of like what the flaws are in these threat situations. And you expose that so that you can help teach others about it so that they may never have to go through it. And that's very commendable.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's awesome. It's I think being authentic is a muscle you have to build, because we're born into insecurity,
Yes.
So, me being like a little fat black kid, without a dad, back dyslexic, last guy finishing the tests, kids, I was, so I've had to build this muscle to then be authentic, to then be able to just be me as much as I can. And then the beauty of that is that then people start to really appreciate you. And it's like you've exposed this lie, about that you were telling yourself about yourself. But then the other side of that lie and the insecurity was, well, when you started, the value wasn't there. It really wasn't. So you had to go on a journey of putting it there so that you could then, like, the seed of greatness that's inside of you could actually blossom. Because you watered it and because you did the work to keep the soil fertile. It's this crazy thing. So when people are like, yo, what you're doing is amazing, you're like, well, thank you. You're like, I'm being myself. Then it's like, no, there's a lot of work that went into that, and that's the work that I literally live to help other people see, know is inside of them and bring out of them.
That's awesome.
That'll make the world so awesome. It's like,
you know who you made me think of?
Yeah.
David Goggins.
I don't know about that. I mean, I use my opposable thumb.
But seriously, like, your situation was very similar to his. Maybe, obviously, I know a lot of people give him crap for being obsessed with running, but that's not the point. The point is that he went through buds multiple times because he's like, it's at this point where I need to prove to others, not just myself, that I can do it. Right? Everyone kept saying that it was impossible. He had injuries, like his knees went out on him. I mean, he went through so much shit, but you know what? He still pushed through it because at this point it was like, I'm either going to prove it to someone else and or myself that I can do this. And I'm going to freaking die if I don't. Right? Like I'm going to live and breathe and keep pushing it. And if I die today, then at least I know that I gave it my all. I didn't just, whimper out on it and be like, oh, I guess, it just wasn't meant for me, which tends to be the case these days. We were talking about soft individuals, the resilience, not just physically, but mental. That's such a big thing. Like everything in your brain, the world is a mind fuck. People don't think that way. They think that it's all physical obstacles that are preventing them from elevating to that next life. But really, it's all about what's in your head. What are you telling yourself when you're going through shit?
Yeah.
No, and so
that's everything. Thank you. That's a huge compliment. I will try to live up to it. I for sure. That means a lot. Puts gas in my tank. That's awesome. PTSD, I know that it's not over, like people look at us and they see a person who's developed and like has things that they think that they want and has, someone they look up to. They see us at this like place in our journey where they think that these things are over. But what would you say? But then the reality is they're not, like I still have stories I tell from, things that happened to me years ago that I'm just like, still sometimes, everyone at the party's like, wow. And like in my head, I'm like, that happened. You know what I mean? And I've told the story a billion times and I'm like, and, or I still have dreams and I still, wake up in the middle of the night startled and do things, you know.
Yeah.
What would you say about dealing with these things and how you dealt with them and how you at least got yourself to where you're at? And, you know, what is that? What comes to mind?
Ugly. It is the ugliest thing I think any individual can work through, because it's not something that you can just take a pill and make it go away.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of self-discipline, which, you know, for years I didn't have. It wasn't until this year that I started my self-discipline, and I'm 31. So, you know, I was trafficked when I was 17. So between then and now, like, it was just pain. People don't realize, I think PTSD, immediately when you think PTSD, people think about veterans, right? They think about war, they think about everything that they've been through. And absolutely, I feel terrible for our service members, including yourself, who still have to go through these things. And, you know, trying to find an escape that is almost impossible because it's in your head. You can't remove yourself from it in any way. It's not like what we were talking about, removing your physical being from your toxic environment. It's impossible. It's almost impossible within yourself. And so dealing with PTSD really comes down to having that self-discipline of, I want better for myself. And what started that for me was when I was at my very worst, you know, literally in the middle of the act of about to commit suicide. And this was last year with my husband around, and it was very hard for him, obviously. I hate hating myself. I hate being where I am. If I don't want to feel like this anymore, what do I have to do? Right? I had this issue where I couldn't sleep at night, and lack of sleep equals irritability, equals not being able to even function properly. So I had to find a means to get around doing that, you know. And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are not sympathetic, who are not understanding, that can be a toll on your PTSD also. I mean, you yourself, if you were to surround yourself with people who, let's theoretically say, didn't believe PTSD existed, right? And you can't even vent to them, even if they couldn't understand. The fact is that they wouldn't be there to listen to your problems, and you needed them. That's hard on you. That's not going to make your situation any easier, right?
No. Or if they thought only veterans have PTSD.
There's that, yeah. Yeah. But you know, like, on that, veterans are almost the only people that I can really connect with about trauma. And it's mainly because of the torture that I went through. Because a lot of times, you know, rape victims know that they were physically assaulted, they were sexually assaulted. And on that level, I can relate with. But to have to go through torture, you know, there's a different level of mentality that was established and understood for veterans, especially depending on what kind of work that you do.
Yeah.
And so recently, my husband and I went to North Carolina, and he introduced me to a friend of his who's, I think, like in his 80s. He's actually one of the few remaining World War II veterans. And he was an interrogator. So I asked him a lot of questions. You know, most of my questions had to do with, well, when you were interrogating and you would do these things to people, how would you be able to go through those things mentally? How would you be able to sleep at night? And down to it, he said, if I didn't do this, somebody would die. It was either my friend would die, or I would die, or, you know, I would fail my country. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of circles back to, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I trying to make myself a better person? Right. And then going also back to, because if I don't make myself a better person, then I can't make others feel good about themselves either. There's no other
power to do it.
Yeah. Right. We just have to do it. And so it's okay to struggle. It's okay to have ugly days. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days, but set yourself up for success, right? If you need to go find answers that can help you sleep at night, go do it. If you need to be physically active to just like sweat all that stress out, go do it. If you need to eat better, go do it. If you need to surround yourself with better people to help you think more clearly or to make you feel good about yourself, just do it. right? I sound like a freaking Nike commercial right now, but it's true.
It is true. It's everything.
Yeah, accept the ugliness of PTSD. Accept that you're going to feel like shit for a really long time. And it's just part of the healing process. There's no overnight success for anything. It may take years, it may take a whole lifetime, but every day that you try is going to help you be where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like we were just talking about. Every day that I try to get better at shooting, might not feel like anything's happening. But then like a year or two later, it's like, wow, man, I actually am getting a lot closer to where I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I think, the other things you said that are really, really important is like, it's you have to like, I don't know, for me, I was I think a lot of my like dealing with traumas, I just got addicted to like my dopamine, and I got addicted to like the intensity of life. I have either conquer or die tattooed across my shoulders in Latin, and dealing with the good and the bad of trauma and combat. And, dealing with that really has to do with like, it starts kind of for me in the physical, it really started in like doing things to not scratch that itch, but like the working out and stuff like that. It really helped exercise that aspect of me. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like, if there's anything in you or anything that you can do that will help you feel better, you better do it. Because the reality is, the best medicine for depression is activity. All right. And if you can't get yourself in activity, you might just kill yourself. Then it's just true, because dudes are doing it all the time, every day, every couple hours, actually, arguably. And thinking that you're too strong or whatever thought is holding you back from doing it is the thought that could cause you to slip into a place that you can't get out of, so I think really what you're answering, like, get in motion and start doing that. It's like feeding that healthy side of yourself, and then staying in the torment of the remembering and the torment that we naturally have to battle because of what we've gone through without being in action is like accepting a slow death,
Yeah. And I think part of it is reconditioning your lifestyle, right? When you saw combat and you came back having this easy life,
it's horrible.
After months or years, you're like, I feel so useless. There's no purpose in my life anymore. Like, and you lost that connection and kinship with your brothers out there. And when you don't have that after coming back to the States, like, you don't know what to do with yourself. Right. So in my situation, when I was removed from being trafficked, my mentality was I had a purpose then. Like, I put my life on the line for that reason, to keep my family alive. And now what do I do with myself? Like, nothing makes sense. The world isn't real to me anymore. I can't interact with people the way that I would have to interact in that room. And so kindness was an anomaly for me. Again, self-respect was an anomaly for me. And so you have to learn how to recondition yourself to fit your environment. Everyone talks about that tactical Gumby or Semper Gumby it is. And it's true. It's like wherever you are, you just have to blend into your environment if you want to thrive in it. So what are you willing to do to make that happen?
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. Two things that I'd say about that is, so much of life is about being in an ever-changing environment, an ever-changing map. And so we have the responsibility to always fashion the most effective tools to deal with that map. When we don't, we get maladaptive behavior. We use strategies and tools that come from an old place in life where maybe those strategies and tools were survival tactics, but here they'll get you killed or cause you to kill someone, vets, or cause you to, they'll bring about negative results, you know? And so we always have to be upgrading the tools we're using to navigate our new environment and find happiness and find progress and all these different things in these new environments. This is a mission in life. I think it really does help deal with the things that we've been through, I forgot the other thing I was going to say, but that was a very good takeaway from that. You know, get yourself in motion, learn the new tools, I always tell guys, find that new fight, you know, and find that new purpose, because this is what I was going to say. Trauma has a very interesting way, because it holds so much weight in your mind and in your being. There's a very interesting way of defining you very deeply. And so with you being in that room and having that purpose and keeping your family alive by doing what you had to do and all these different things, it like makes that your world, you know. It makes Iraq, made it my world. Even now, I still love Iraq. I'll go back there right now and oddly feel at home, you know. And I had all these near-death experiences, and you know, like people tried to kill me, and they had killed me at one point, and all these different things. And like some would say, like, wasn't it like a horrible thing, or wasn't that room a horrible place? And yeah, it was. It was. I never have experienced misery like that in my life. I'll never experience it again like that, but I'll never let myself forget it either. There's so much to be said for that, but trauma has a way of like defining your reality so richly and so deeply that when you come to these other realities, it's like you're completely disconnected. And it's like this rich, deep purpose. It's like you can't really get at that again without that intensity and that trauma. It's very interesting. And so much of life is like rehabbing yourself to like come back up to the surface of like normalness, and fashioning new tools to be able to step into that fight. And the thing I think about civilian life that's so interesting, especially when you've lived such an intense life before, like both of us have, you may think that civilian life, because it's comfortable, it's not dangerous. But it's so seductive that the comfort you have is what's dangerous. Because you ferment, you ferment into this just blob of unworked out, like it's corrosive. The comfort is corrosive. And that will kill you as your identity.
And bad guys, terrorists, you name it, they are all relying on the fact that you remember how comfortable the civilian life is.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we have like Irvine, right? Everyone's like, oh, it's so clean. There's nothing that ever happens.
The cop cars are white, for crying out loud. You know, like
but shit happens in the most beautiful places. Like the worst things happen in the most beautiful places.
Yeah.
People say, why would it happen in Orange County? Well, it's a very rich county, right? You have money trickling in every day. People who live there are very well off, and you just have to follow the money.
Yeah. Yes. Follow the money. Yeah. If you ever really want to know the truth, turn off the news and follow the money. Yeah. That's how you find it in this world. What good has come from this in your life?
From the trafficking, or
from the trafficking situation? God. What did you see?
Normally, the immediate thought is there was nothing good that came out of it, right? Because obviously I'm focusing on the negative aspects that I've experienced. I still have a bitterness in my heart when I think about the day that I didn't get to kill myself. I'm going to be hung on to that for a while, I know. But the beauty of it is that even if I'm ungrateful that I had a second chance at life, I never would have experienced this. I never would have experienced having amazing people in my life, such as yourself, my husband. Like, I never planned on getting married. And when I did, everyone's like, are you serious? Did that really happen? Or are you just kidding? I never would have surrounded myself with amazing people, never would have gotten married, wouldn't be a firearms instructor, wouldn't have never learned how to shoot competitively. My life has changed dramatically for the better. And if I went back in time to that moment when I was about to kill myself and said, you just have to believe and trust in the process that good things will come, I would not believe that at all. I'm like, you're fucking with me. There's something wrong here. Like, I'm delusional at this point, right? And I'm sure that in your own ways, you probably sat waiting to wait out there in the stand, and you're just like, life doesn't seem like it can get better than this moment. But it's true, it does. And it's because you wanted it, right? Like, I had a chance at life again. And even though I wandered for years and I couldn't find myself, I eventually landed somewhere. I started somewhere, even if it was much later in my life. And a lot of people think, oh, I started too late, whether it's a career or a relationship, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because the fact is that you're starting somewhere. And every day that you get to live and breathe is another chance for you to start over if you have to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's why I put the question there, because the duality of life is there. Light implies dark, life implies death. Ones, zeros, it's all there. Left implies right, up implies down. You can't get away from it. It's crazy. It's a crazy thought considering some of the things we've been through. But ultimately, there's this thing called choice. And what we choose to look at is what we choose to amplify, is what we choose to be. And the reality of this game is, no matter what it is that's happened to all of us, there is good that can come from it. It's the alchemy of life. And you wouldn't be here as strong as you are. You wouldn't be here with the ability to speak into people's lives that are thinking that no one understands and no one can reach them, and that they have been through the most horrible things imaginable. You wouldn't be here able to shining a light, like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the rest of your life is going to look like or what you're going to choose to do with it. But in this moment, you're sitting here, you're healthy, you're strong, you've got your struggles. We've all got our struggles. You're an example, you're a teacher, you're a wife, and the things that can come from that are just absolutely boundless. It's such a beautiful thing, what you've chosen to do, and, I do quote the Bible a lot because it's what has guided me, but, I've placed before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life, and you've chosen life. That says everything about you, and the sovereignty we have as humans. It's such a beautiful and powerful thing. It's not to be taken lightly. Just because bad things happen doesn't mean that's what it is. No, what we choose is what it is. Okay. And you've chosen, to make something out of it. What doesn't kill you has made you stronger.
It'll still suck, but
yeah, it still sucks. Oh yeah. We have our scars,
Yeah.
But it's powerful stuff. I love it. Thank you for all of that. How would you like to be remembered as we start to close this?
Oh my gosh. I've never even thought about that question.
Never a dull moment.
No, never. You're always leaving me guessing. How do I want to be remembered? I don't seek glory or recognition in anything, honestly. I just want to be remembered as a good human being, a genuine human being, and that's it. And I think it's because I know how hard it is to be a good person. A lot of times we're tempted into falling into what we feel. Like, if you're having a shitty day, you're like, I want to just fuck the world. Like, screw it, I give up. But it takes a lot for you to still go out of your way to make sure that your behavior doesn't affect others, right? It's very selfish if you were to just fall into that trap of like, feel what you feel and then do whatever you want. Then you start unraveling yourself at that point. All that discipline that you gained over the years to be who you currently are can be gone in a split second based on a poor choice. And so for me, every day I ask myself, like, who do I want to be today? Right? It's not necessarily like I want to be a good person. It's who do I want to be? My actions may be good. My words may be good. But am I going to be able to live with myself at the end of the day with the words and the choices that I've made? And how will that affect others? So it's funny because I had a friend over last night and she jokingly said, I have this fear that no one's going to show up at my funeral when I die. And immediately I'm like, why would it matter? Because you're dead. Like, you won't know the difference, right? But she made a very good point. The amount of people that show up at your funeral is not necessarily a representation of who you've touched in your life, but generally speaking, it shows that someone has seen that you're a good individual. And for me, I just want to leave a legacy of good and genuine behaviors, right? Like, through my teaching, and that's the best way that I can do it because I currently don't have kids. It's, how am I making a positive impact in their life that they can carry on to wherever they go in life? Because that confidence building is very addicting. right? There's a reason why people listen to you and your podcast. There's a reason why we go and seek working out, because we feel good about ourselves. So if we find an individual who can leave a lasting legacy of goodness in this world, I think that's huge. I think that's really important. And so for me, I just want to be seen as someone who's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Very honorable. Absolutely. No, that's the aim. That's the aim. Absolutely. And it says a lot, coming from the things that you've come from, to be able to do that. It's huge. It means everything, honestly. I don't know if people realize it, but it does.
Thank you.
Favorite quote, mantra, saying?
Favorite quote. So my dark side.
It's always there.
Yeah. My dark side says, let not life divide what death can join together.
Interesting.
And for me, it's that you're suffering in this lifetime, and in an instant you can choose death and end everything, right? You can finally be at peace, because that's what I was seeking, is peace, for a long time. And I lived off that quote for a long time. But now I don't really have a very specific quote. I think anything that speaks to me along the lines of quit tomorrow. You might hate today, but just get through it. And if you really want to quit, then quit tomorrow. When reality, you're just putting it off.
Yeah.
Right? Like any struggle that you're going through, just go through it today and then just think about it overnight.
Yeah. Put in the 24-hour box. I think also your first quote also works, because like the reality is you're choosing to make peace with your life. You're not choosing death for that peace. You're choosing to make peace with your life, and every day that you try to live a better life. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful quote. I see the duality even in that. It's like, no, you're choosing in these moments, as you try to create a better life, you're choosing peace with yourself while you're alive, which is the highest road you can choose, despite anything and everything that happens. And that's what we have to do as humans. It's beautiful. Absolutely. Is there a habit that you would recommend people look into to help them be better people or better protectors or anything like that? I always like to see what people's habits are like.
I guess that leads into another quote: practice makes habits.
Yeah.
And we can think of it as a biomechanical behavior. We can think of it as something that you meditate over. But a habit to make yourself better really starts with emotional intelligence, right? When we're struggling, we immediately feel instinctive emotions like sadness, anger. You drive out there, someone's cutting you off, you feel road rage. But you have to choose what you're going to be doing next about that situation. Am I going to let myself have a bad day over this not even 30-second incident? Like maybe it was a 5-second incident. Or am I just going to say, you know what, maybe this person is having to rush to the hospital, or maybe that they just didn't realize that I was right behind them. The fact is nobody got hurt, so I'm not going to get worked up over it.
Right.
Practicing the emotional intelligence on about everything that you do throughout your day will help you understand how you yourself can react to things better.
100%. Will Smith is the first person I heard say this, but life is so much less about managing your situation or your environment. It's really about managing your mind.
Yeah. And that's something that my husband and I actually talk a lot about, because he and I are similar in many ways, but we're also different in other ways, right? Like he's a very intellectual, but also more sensitive person when it comes to emotions. And for me, because my therapist says I'm way too logical and that I don't allow myself to feel, I have to learn from him what I'm allowed to feel or when it's appropriate to feel things, right? So for me, my escape from a lot of conflict would be to disassociate myself into a third perspective and to try and compartmentalize everything in front of me, right? I literally think in an algorithm. Something's happening. What are my options and what are the end results to those options? it seems easy, right? But then because I'm human, I have the emotional aspect behind it. But because I've conditioned myself to not feel, and to think that way, I have to start allowing myself to understand it's okay to feel good about these things, or it's okay to feel bad about these things. But if you're feeling something, don't let it get in the way of your thought process, right? And so it's weird because I know a lot of people don't quite understand that, where it's like, well, how do you not have emotions? I have emotions, right? Obviously, I just cried a little bit earlier because of intense things that had happened in my past. But if you don't understand emotional intelligence and you start building and having pent up, let's say, anger or sadness, how do you think that's going to affect the future? Like, it's going to explode or implode at some point. But if you're able to process those emotions on a regular basis and to really talk yourself through it, and you have a better understanding of why you react to something and how you can overcome those reactions, I think that you would live a much better lifestyle.
You're right. I agree with you 100%.
Sorry, I need to rant, I know.
No, it's good. I'm very much the same way. I very much work the same way. I get in fights with my psychology teachers all the time. They're like, you need to be spiritual. And I'm like, yeah, well, look, once I come up with a plan,
Yeah.
I'll pick an emotion that'll help me execute that plan, and we'll be good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, crying just doesn't help me. They're like, and they're like, but don't you? I'm like, yeah, I know my emotions. I know how I feel about something, but I'm not going to let that dictate the way I act. My emotions are like misbehaving children. I had one psychologist that was like, said something to me like, you need to like, something about like, you need to like, like honor your feelings or do what you feel or something. And I was like, you're crazy. No, I was like, if I did what I felt, there'd be dead people, maybe pregnant people everywhere. Ladies, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I was like, absolutely, I'm a human being. This is crazy right now, what's going on in here, okay? Like, no one needs to even know what goes on in here. Okay?
They're like, just let me do my thing.
Right. No, so I emotional intelligence is everything. It's
but something that I also learned through that journey is, if you don't feel something, don't try to force feelings into it. This world that we live in right now, it's all about thoughts and feelings. And I hate that, because if I don't feel something specific, why do I have to force it? It's not natural to me. Why am I trying to convince myself to feel something? It's weird to me, like that concept. And so, I had that discussion with my husband not too long ago, because he jokingly says I'm a robot, because when we have discussions, or if I have a thought process that I'm expressing to him, he's just like, that's very like linear and binary. And I have an explanation for everything. But what he also realized is, like, if she sees things logically and she has no emotional attachment to any of those thoughts, like, why do I have to make her understand what I feel, right, in that different perspective? And of course, like, we try to feed off of each other, trying to understand why somebody feels something, but don't force yourself to feel that equally if you don't.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, 100%. And you say I'm the same way with my wife. We're the same, and everyone's like feeling all these things, even to the point where I get gifts sometimes, and I'm just like, I have to like try to make myself look happy so everyone knows I'm happy, but I am really happy. But like my actual genuine response is like, yo, this is cool, thanks, man. But I have to be like, but everyone will be like, do you even like it or whatever? But like it's a thing.
Like, when when you receive a gift, you don't see the object itself, you see the intent behind it, and that's what you appreciate, right? You're like, oh, this person thought about me, and that's really awesome, even if you're like, I don't really care about the gift. But people are so focused on the material objects, right? Because they themselves put so much thought and emotion behind the object, thinking that you're going to like it, when really it's just the gesture that you appreciate, not necessarily the item itself.
Right. Well, this has been amazing. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Byron.
That's been beautiful. I really appreciate you. And I really honor you, your strength, and the decisions you've made with yourself. Despite everything, it's very, very honorable. And
I hope that this episode will go far and reach the people it's supposed to reach.
Thank you.
It's legacy work. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Where are you at these days? What are you up to these days? Where can people find you? Make sure you send me any handles and stuff, like if you're on the gram or all that stuff. Where can people find you these days?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm at AIM, the number 2 dot. Oh no, I just messed that up. I'm sorry. I'm going to start.
Oh, good. The links will be down below once you send them
Yeah.
to me.
So it's on Instagram, I'm at aim to misbehave. And we'll just have that written out because it's a little complicated to write out. But in any case, outside of Instagram or social media, I could be found at Prado Olympic Shooting Park teaching private lessons or group lessons, and then down in Oceanside at Iron Sights. So
outstanding. And she's an outstanding firearms instructor, and I've trained with Emily, and she can shoot, she can hang, she's awesome. So and yeah, dudes, if you guys aren't on your game, don't challenge her, because we good to go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much once again, and I'm looking forward to everything and watching what you're going to do with the rest of your life, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Boom. Yo, what up? I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode. Hey, listen, in order to get more out of the brand, I want to encourage you to go join us on our social media platforms and join us at protectornation.com. We post different types of content on our different platforms at different times. You'll get blog posts, you'll get videos, you'll get real world combat engagements and things like that. So stay plugged in order to get the most out of the brand. In order to support us, also go to protectornation.com and buy something, or join forces with me on Patreon. You'll scroll down the homepage and you'll see the link. Anything you can give counts. Think about whatever you would lose in your cushions or like spend on McDonald's this month, $5 a month, whatever it is. That helps us make the world a better place by making good people dangerous. Anyways, this is Byron Rodgers, protector by nature and by trade, and I'll see you on the next piece of content, whether it's a video or podcast. Out.